The council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as Ambassador Al adjusted his ceremonial robes. The massive crystalline structure overlooked the capital city of Prime, where beings from across the galaxy conducted their daily business under the twin suns. Today's meeting would determine the fate of the last known human in existence. "The specimen is barely 2 solar cycles old," announced Council Member Ra, her scaled features reflecting disgust. "These humans destroyed their own world through warfare and environmental collapse. Why should we waste resources on this creature?" Al studied the sleeping infant through the transparent containment field. The small being looked remarkably fragile compared to the robust physiology of most galactic species. Its skin was pale and soft, lacking the protective scales, carapaces, or thick hide that evolution had blessed other sentient races with. Tiny fingers curled and uncurled as it dreamed, completely unaware that its entire species had been wiped out in the Great Human War just months before. "The child is innocent of its species' crimes," Al said carefully. "Our laws clearly state that orphaned young must be cared for regardless of origin." "Laws written before we knew what monsters humans could become," spat General Thoros, his 4 arms crossed in obvious disapproval. "They conquered 12 systems before they finally stopped them. Billions died because of human aggression." The infant stirred slightly, making soft, cooing sounds that seemed to echo strangely in the vast chamber. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. None of them had experience with human young, and the alien sounds were unsettling. "The question remains," said Elder, the ancient crystalline's voice resonating through the chamber like wind chimes. "What do we do with it? No civilized species will accept responsibility for a human child. The risk is too great." Al had anticipated this problem. "I have a proposal that will satisfy everyone's concerns about safety while honoring our obligations." The council turned their attention to him, waiting. "We give the child to Kay." Silence fell over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Even the ever-present humming of the city's energy systems seemed to quiet. General Thoros' eyes widened, and Ra actually took a step backward. "You cannot be serious," whispered Elder. Kay was a legend among legends, even by draconian standards. The massive reptilian warrior stood nearly 4 meters tall when upright, with scales harder than military-grade armor and claws that could rend through starship hull plating. His species, the Draconians, were the most feared warriors in known space. They lived for combat, honor, and the thrill of proving their strength against worthy opponents. But Kay was special even among his own kind. He had never been defeated in single combat. His battle record included victories against entire enemy squads, and he had once held off an invasion fleet single-handedly while reinforcements arrived. The Draconian warrior code demanded respect for strength above all else, and none were stronger than Kay the Unbroken. "He's currently serving a punishment detail on the prison moon of 7, Al continued. "Officially for excessive enthusiasm during the siege of the. He destroyed 3 enemy dreadnoughts after they had already surrendered." "All the more reason why he's completely unsuitable," Ra protested. "You want to give an innocent child to a creature who considers mercy a weakness." "Think about it logically," Al argued. "No one would dare harm a child under Kay's protection. His reputation alone would ensure the human's safety. And if the child truly carries the violent genes of its species, who better to contain that threat than the greatest warrior alive?" General Thoros stroked his chin thoughtfully. "It would solve our immediate problem. The human would be cared for, technically fulfilling our legal obligations. And if it becomes dangerous..." "Kay would handle it," Elder finished. "I admit the logic is sound if somewhat cruel. The child will either die quickly from Kay's neglect, proving humans are as weak as they appear," added Ra with cold calculation, "or it will survive and grow strong under his influence. Either way, it becomes his responsibility, not ours." The vote was unanimous. Within hours, a transport ship departed for the harsh mining world of 7, carrying the sleeping human infant and a very nervous diplomatic courier. 7 was a world of perpetual twilight, lit only by its dying red sun and the artificial lights of the massive mining operations that its surface. The prison complex squatted like a metal tumor on the northern continent, housing the galaxy's most dangerous criminals, and in special cases, warriors too violent even for military service. Courier K clutched the stasis pod containing the human child as he was escorted through the prison's corridors. The other inmates watched him pass with curious eyes. Seeing him in such a place was unusual enough, but one carrying what appeared to be precious cargo was unprecedented. Kay's cell is at the end of this corridor, the guard captain informed him. Fair warning, he hasn't spoken to anyone in 6 months. Draconians don't handle captivity well. They stopped before a massive, reinforced door marked with warning symbols in dozens of languages. Through the transparent aluminum viewing port, Kay could see the legendary warrior. Kay sat motionless in the center of his cell, legs crossed in meditation pose. Even sitting, he dominated the space. His scales were a deep emerald green, marked with the ritual scars that told the story of his countless victories. His eyes were closed, but Kay had no doubt the warrior was completely aware of their presence. Kay of the third scale, the guard captain called out. You have a visitor with an official message from the Galactic Council. The massive eyes opened slowly, fixing on the viewing port with an intensity that made Kay's knees weak. When Kay rose to his feet, the movement was fluid and graceful despite his enormous size. He approached the door with predatory quiet. Speak, he said simply, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the walls. Kay cleared his throat nervously. Great warrior, the council has decided to grant you early release from your sentence. One scaled eyebrow rose slightly. In exchange for what service? You are to become the guardian of this human infant. Kay held up the stasis pod, hopping his hands weren't shaking too visibly. For a long moment, Kay simply stared at the pod. Then, to everyone's surprise, he began to laugh. It started as a low chuckle but built into a full-throated roar of amusement that echoed through the entire cell block. They send me a baby, he said between bouts of laughter. The mightiest warrior in the galaxy is to become a nursemaid to a pink, soft creature from a dead world. The council believes your unique skills make you the ideal choice, Kay stammered. Of course they do. Kay's laughter died away, replaced by a calculating look. They expect me to either neglect it to death or crush it in my claws. Either way, they are rid of both their human problem and their inconvenient warrior. The door cycled open with a series of mechanical clicks and pneumatic hisses. Kay stepped through, and Kay had to crane his neck back to meet the warrior's gaze. Give me the child, Kay commanded, extending one massive clawed hand. Perhaps we should wait until we reach more suitable accommodations, Kay suggested weakly. I said give me the child. With trembling hands, Kay deactivated the stasis pod and carefully transferred the sleeping infant to Kay's arms. The baby looked impossibly small against the warrior's massive chest, no bigger than one of his hands. The infant's eyes fluttered open at the change in temperature and pressure. For a moment that stretched into eternity, the most feared warrior in the galaxy and the last human in existence regarded each other in perfect silence. The baby reached up with one tiny hand and grasped Kay's finger. Something changed in the Draconian's expression. The cold calculation and barely contained violence that had defined him for centuries seemed to soften, just slightly. He looked down at the small creature with something that might have been wonder. What is its name? He asked quietly. The council designated it as Human Subject 1, Kay replied. It has no given name. Then I will name him. Kay's voice carried a note of finality that brooked no argument. He shall be called, in the old tongue it means small flame. You're accepting the guardianship. Kay's eyes never left the infant's face. Had released his finger and was now making soft, gurgling sounds, completely unafraid of the massive predator holding him. The council thinks they are punishing me, Kay said slowly. They believe caring for this soft creature will break my spirit, make me weak. They do not understand draconian ways. He looked up at Kay with eyes that gleamed like emeralds in firelight. Strength protects weakness. That is the way. This small one will learn to be strong or he will die. If he learns, he will become something the galaxy has never seen. If he dies, Kay shrugged, then the council gets what they wanted. And if he becomes dangerous, if the human genetic legacy proves too violent to control, then I will have taught him well, Kay replied with something that might have been pride. And the galaxy will tremble before what we have wrought together. As they left the prison complex, fell asleep again in Kay's arms, completely trusting in the strength that surrounded him. The baby couldn't understand the significance of this moment, couldn't comprehend that his guardian was both his greatest protection and potentially his greatest threat. but somewhere in the ancient genetic memory that had driven humanity to conquer the stars before their fall. Perhaps he sensed that his survival would require him to become something more than human. Under the tutelage of the galaxy's greatest warrior, would either die as the last weak remnant of a failed species, or he would grow into something that would remind the universe why humanity had once been feared. The ship carrying them toward their new life together disappeared into the star-scattered darkness, beginning a journey that would reshape the destiny of every living being in the galaxy. Time would tell whether the Council's decision had been an act of mercy or the greatest mistake in galactic history. 7 years had passed since the Council's fateful decision, and the remote world of Dracos 3 had become home to the galaxy's most unusual family. The planet was a draconian training world, where young warriors learned the ancient arts of combat and honor before joining their clans. It was here that Kay had brought to grow up, far from the political machinations and watchful eyes of the galactic government. The morning mist clung to the mountain peaks as practiced his combat forms on the plateau outside their dwelling. At 7 years old, he stood barely as tall as Kay's knee, but his movements carried a precision and fluidity that would have impressed masters twice his age. His human features had sharpened over the years of harsh training, and his pale skin was now bronzed from countless hours under the alien sun. Again, Kay commanded, his massive form seated on a boulder nearby. "Your stance is weak. A youngling could knock you over." Reset his position, muscles coiling with controlled tension. The training sword in his hands was crafted specifically for his smaller frame, but it was made from the same quantum-forged metal as Kay's own legendary blade. Nothing but the best for the ward of Kay the Unbroken. "Better," the Draconian rumbled as flowed through the sequence again. "But you're thinking too much. Combat is not mathematics, little flame. It is instinct wed to discipline." Over the years, their relationship had evolved into something neither had expected. Kay had approached the task of raising with the same methodical precision he brought to warfare. The boy needed food, so Kay learned to prepare meals suitable for human physiology. He needed shelter, so Kay built a dwelling that could accommodate both their vastly different sizes. He needed education, so Kay taught him everything he knew about combat, strategy, and the harsh realities of galactic politics. But somewhere along the way, duty had transformed into something deeper. The fierce warrior who had never shown mercy to an enemy found himself staying awake through childhood fevers, teaching the boy to read not just in galactic standard, but in the ancient draconian script, and feeling a strange pride when the small human mastered techniques that challenged adult warriors. "I've been thinking about the sparring match with Orcs students next week," said, lowering his practice sword. His breathing was controlled despite the intense workout, a testament to years of conditioning. "And what have you concluded?" "They'll expect me to be weak because I'm human. They'll try to overwhelm me with brute force." Eyes, still clearly human but with a predatory gleam that spoke to his upbringing, focused on his guardian. "But humans have advantages they don't understand." Kay's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "Elaborate." "Speed, adaptability, the ability to think outside traditional combat patterns." Began moving through a modified sequence, one that incorporated techniques from multiple draconian fighting styles blended with innovations of his own creation. Draconian martial arts are based on honor and strength, but humans were survivors first. "Careful, little flame," Kay's tone carried warning. "There is a difference between adaptation and dishonor. The line is sometimes thin." "I know, you've taught me well," sheathed his sword with practiced ease. "I won't shame your training or your name, but I won't pretend to be something I'm not either." Their conversation was interrupted by the distant roar of atmospheric engines. A sleek transport ship was approaching their mountain home, bearing the diplomatic markings of the Galactic Council. Kay rose smoothly to his feet, one hand moving instinctively to his weapon. "Were you expecting visitors?" asked, his own stance shifting subtly into a ready position. "I stopped expecting anything from the Council years ago." Kay's eyes tracked the ship as it settled onto the landing pad he had carved from the mountainside. "Stay behind me, but be ready to move." The ship's ramp descended with a hydraulic hiss, and Ambassador Al emerged, flanked by 2 security guards. They looked older than when Kay had last seen him, his ceremonial robes somehow more subdued. "Kay of the 3rd scale," Al called out formally. "I come under flag of diplomatic immunity to speak with you about a matter of galactic importance." Speak, Kay replied, making no move to approach. Al's gaze found standing partially concealed behind the massive warrior. The boy, he's grown. His name is, Kay said with quiet intensity, and he is under my protection. Of course, Al stepped forward carefully. The Council has received disturbing reports from across the galaxy, shipping lanes attacked by unknown raiders, entire colonies vanishing without distress calls, and in each case, survivors speak of attackers who fight with a ferocity and tactical brilliance that reminds them of the old human fleets. Felt Kay's tension increase slightly. The humans are extinct, the warrior said flatly. So we believed, but 3 days ago a Council patrol ship encountered a raider vessel. The engagement was brief, but long enough to confirm that the attackers were indeed human. Al's expression was grim. Somehow some humans survived their world's destruction, and they're angry. What does this have to do with us? The survivors of that encounter described the enemy leader, a woman with the bearing of a military commander and eyes like frozen stars. She spoke directly to our captain before her ship escaped. Al paused. She asked about the human child the Council had taken. She asked about. The silence that followed was broken only by the wind through the mountain peaks. Stepped out from behind Kay, his young face set in lines too serious for his age. How many humans are there? He asked quietly. Unknown. Intelligence suggests at least several thousand, possibly more. They've been hiding in the outer rim, building strength. Al looked between the boy and his guardian. The Council believes they're preparing for war. And you want to use as a bargaining chip, Kay stated, his voice carrying the flat tone that preceded violence. The Council wants to prevent another human war, Al corrected quickly. Is the only human who's been raised in galactic society. He could serve as an ambassador, help negotiate a peaceful resolution. Laughed, a sound that carried surprising bitterness for someone so young. You mean you want me to convince my own species to submit to the same galactic order that left me as the only survivor? The alternative could be the destruction of everything we've built, Al pressed. These human raiders are different from the armies we fought before. They're desperate, driven by revenge, and they're learning. Each attack is more sophisticated than the last. Kay placed a massive hand on his shoulder. The choice is yours, little flame. I have taught you to think for yourself. Was quiet for a long moment, his mind racing through possibilities and consequences. Tell me more about their leader, this woman who asked about me. Admiral Sarah, she commanded one of the human evacuation fleets during the final days of the war. Her ship was presumed destroyed with all hands. Al accessed his. Would you like to see her file? The holographic display showed a stern-faced woman in her 40s, with the kind of bearing that spoke to years of command experience. Her eyes held the particular hardness that came from losing everything and finding the strength to continue anyway. She struggled for the right word. Formidable, Kay supplied, a worthy opponent. A possible ally, corrected, if approached correctly. He looked up at his guardian. You've taught me about strength and honor, but you've also taught me about survival. These humans, my people, they survived when everyone believed they were extinct. That takes a special kind of strength. It does, Kay agreed. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that the Council is right to be afraid, but not for the reasons they believe. Eyes held a calculating gleam that would have looked familiar to anyone who had studied human military history. They're afraid of another human war because they remember how the last one went, but they don't understand what's different now. Which is, before humans were fighting for territory, for resources, for political power. These survivors are fighting for something much more dangerous. Turned to face Al directly. They're fighting for the right to exist. The ambassador shifted uncomfortably. What are you suggesting? I'll meet with Admiral, but not as the Council's ambassador. His voice carried new authority, the confidence of someone who had finally found his purpose. I'll meet with her as what I am, the last human raised by the greatest warrior in the galaxy. Kay's warning tone was gentle but clear. I know the risks, but I also know that this won't end with negotiation or surrender. The Council created this situation when they decided humanity was too dangerous to survive. Now they have to deal with the consequences. Al looked between the boy and the massive warrior who had raised him. And if your meeting with Admiral goes poorly, if she sees you as a traitor to your own species. Smile was sharp enough to cut diamond. Then the galaxy will discover what happens when you take a human child, raise him as a draconian warrior, and then threaten the only family he's ever known. You would fight your own people. I would protect what's mine, said simply. Just as they're trying to protect what's theirs, the question is whether we can find a way to do both without destroying everything else in the process. Kay's expression was unreadable, but there was something that might have been pride in his ancient eyes. 7 years ago, the Council had given him a weak human infant, expecting either its death or his corruption. Instead, they had created something entirely new. Not human, not draconian, but something that carried the best traits of both. Very well, Al said finally. I'll arrange the meeting, but understand that once this path is begun, there may be no turning back. There was no turning back the moment you decided to exile the last human to a prison planet, replied. Everything since then has just been consequences waiting to unfold. As the diplomatic ship departed, and Kay stood together on their mountain peak, watching it disappear into the star-scattered sky. The boy who had been raised by a dragon was about to meet the remnants of his birth species, carrying with him the potential to either forge a new peace or unleash a war that would make the previous human conflicts seem like minor skirmishes. Are you afraid? Kay asked quietly. Terrified, admitted. But you taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing what needs to be done despite the fear. And what needs to be done? Was quiet for a moment, watching the alien stars emerge in the darkening sky. I need to find out if there's still enough humanity left in me to understand my people, and enough draconian strength to protect the galaxy from what they might become. And if there isn't, then the Council will get exactly what they deserve, and the galaxy will burn. The neutral space station Concordia 7 hung suspended between the territories of 3 major galactic powers, its gleaming hull reflecting the light of a nearby nebula. For decades, it had served as the galaxy's primary diplomatic meeting ground, where treaties were signed and wars were ended. Today, it would host the most important meeting in recent galactic history. Stood before the mirror in his assigned quarters, adjusting the ceremonial armor Kay had commissioned for him. The quantum-forged metal was lighter than air but stronger than starship hull plating, crafted in the style of ancient draconian war gear, but sized and modified for human physiology. The breastplate bore the symbol of Kay's clan, marking as a protected ward of one of the galaxy's most powerful families. You look like a warrior, Kay observed from the doorway. Even in the station's enlarged corridors, the massive draconian had to duck slightly to enter. But remember, little flame, the strongest armor is the mind that guides it. I remember everything you taught me, secured his ceremonial blade at his side. The weapon was functional despite its formal appearance, a lesson Kay had drilled into him from childhood. Diplomacy is just another form of combat. Know your opponent, understand their motivations, and never show weakness until you're ready to strike. And what do you know about Admiral? Had spent the 3-day journey to Concordia 7 studying everything available about the human survivors. She's brilliant, ruthless, and completely dedicated to protecting what remains of humanity. She escaped the destruction of Earth with approximately 30,000 survivors, mostly military personnel and their families. For 7 years, they've been building a fleet from salvaged technology and captured ships. Their capabilities, unknown but significant. The raids suggest they've developed new tactical approaches that combine human adaptability with technology stolen from multiple species. Their ships appear to be heavily modified for maximum maneuverability and firepower. Paused, accessing his. Most importantly, they've maintained discipline and unit cohesion despite 7 years of exile and constant danger. Impressive, Kay admitted, and dangerous. Very dangerous, which is why this meeting is critical. Turned to face his guardian fully. The Council is preparing for war. 3 full battle fleets are already moving toward the Outer Rim if this goes badly. Then we will face the consequences together, Kay stated with calm finality. I have stood beside you for 7 years. I will not abandon you now. The Commitment Station's communication system chimed softly. Of House K, your presence is requested in Conference Room Alpha. Admiral has arrived. Together, they made their way through the station's corridors. Other diplomats and their entourages stepped aside as they passed, many staring openly at the unusual pair. Rumors had spread quickly through the diplomatic community about the human raised by draconians, and speculation about his role in the coming crisis was rampant. The conference room was large and circular, designed to accommodate beings of various sizes and physiologies. Admiral was already seated at the far side of the table, flanked by two officers who bore the faces of veteran combat soldiers. She looked exactly like her intelligence photos, but with an additional weight of authority that came from years of impossible survival. Her eyes fixed on as he entered, and he could see her analyzing him with the trained gaze of a military commander. She saw the draconian armor, the confident bearing, the weapon at his side. But her expression remained carefully neutral. "Admiral," said formally, offering the slight bow that draconian protocol demanded when meeting an equal. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Her voice carried the particular tone of someone accustomed to command. "You're smaller than I expected." "Size isn't everything," replied with a slight smile. "Kay taught me that." His gaze shifted to the massive draconian. "The famous Kay the Unbroken, your reputation precedes you." "As does yours, Admiral. Few could have accomplished what you have with so little." Kay settled into a reinforced chair designed for his species. "Has spoken much of your tactical innovations." "Has he? Interesting." Turned back to, "Tell me, young man, do you consider yourself human?" The question hung in the air like a charged particle field. Had known it would come, but hearing it spoken aloud gave it new weight. "I am what I am," he replied carefully. "Human genetics, draconian upbringing, I carry the heritage of both species." "That's not what I asked." "Yes, it is," leaned forward slightly. "You want to know where my loyalties lie, whether I'm a tool of the Council or someone who might understand what you've endured. The answer is neither and both." His expression didn't change, but her officers shifted slightly in their seats. "Elaborate." "I was raised by the greatest warrior in the galaxy because the Council expected me to either die quickly or become a controllable asset. They thought Kay would break my spirit or crush my humanity." His voice carried quiet intensity. "They were wrong on all counts. And now I'm the only human in the galaxy who understands both sides of this conflict. I know what humanity was capable of at its best and worst. But I also know what the other species fear about us, and why they might have justification for that fear." Admiral was quiet for a long moment, studying the young man before her. Finally, she spoke. "The Council's messenger promised that you would help negotiate our peaceful surrender." The Council's messenger was an optimist. Smile held no humor. "I told them I would meet with you as what I am, a human raised by a warrior who values strength and honor above political convenience." "And what do you propose?" "I propose we discuss the real situation rather than the comfortable lies everyone else is telling themselves." Activated the room's holographic display, showing a star map of the galaxy. "The Council controls the inner systems, fat and prosperous and convinced of their own superiority. You control nothing but your ships and your anger. Both sides are preparing for a war that will devastate everything between here and the Rim." "We didn't start this war," said sharply. "We're the survivors of a genocide." "You're right, and the Council knows it." Manipulated the display, highlighting recent shipping attacks and colony raids. "But they also know that you're not the same humans they fought before. You're smarter, more desperate, and completely without mercy for anyone you consider an enemy." "Your point?" "My point is that a conventional war between the Council and human survivors won't end in anyone's victory. It will end with the collapse of galactic civilization and the rise of something much worse." Changed the display to show intelligence reports from the galaxy's unexplored regions. "The Void Hunters have been probing our borders for decades, held back only by the strength of our combined fleets. A civil war between humans and the Council will leave us all defenseless." Studied the data with the eye of someone who understood strategic implications. "You're suggesting we ally with the people who destroyed our world." "I'm suggesting you ally with the people who have the most to lose if humanity proves its critics right." His voice carried new authority. "The Council made a mistake 7 years ago. They let fear override justice, and innocent people died because of it. But if you wage war for revenge alone, you'll prove they were right to be afraid." "And what alternative do you suggest?" "Integration." The word dropped into the room like a fusion bomb. "Not surrender, not submission. True integration of human survivors into galactic society with full rights and protections." His officers exchanged glances. "The Council will never agree to that." "The Council will agree to whatever keeps them alive." Kay interjected. Political leaders understand survival very well. But integration requires trust, said, and trust requires guarantees that neither side is willing to provide. Which is where I come in. Stood, moving to the center of the room. You need someone who understands both human capabilities and galactic politics. The Council needs someone who can speak for humanity without threatening their power structures. And both sides need someone who can serve as a bridge between two completely different ways of thinking. You want to be humanity's representative to the Council. I want to be humanity's voice in a galaxy that's forgotten we're capable of more than destruction. His eyes held the particular intensity that Kay had seen in the greatest warriors. But I won't do it alone. What do you mean? I mean that integration works both ways. The Council gets human innovation and adaptability working for galactic civilization instead of against it. But humans get something too. Manipulated the display again, showing star charts of unexplored space. A chance to do what we do best, explore, expand, and face the challenges that others consider impossible. The Outer Rim territories, breathed. Beyond the Outer Rim, the unknown sectors where the Void Hunters are massing, where ancient technologies wait to be discovered, where the next great expansion of galactic civilization will begin. His voice carried growing excitement. The Council gets to keep their comfortable core worlds. Humanity gets a chance to rebuild in the places that matter most. And if the Council betrays us again, then they'll discover that a human fleet raised on the principles of draconian honor makes their previous enemies look like children playing with toys. Smile was sharp and dangerous. Kay didn't just raise me, Admiral. He taught me to think like a warrior. And the first lesson of draconian warfare is that the strongest defense is the ability to inflict unacceptable damage on your enemies. Was quiet for a long time, her mind clearly working through possibilities and consequences. Finally, she looked up with something that might have been respect. You're proposing a gamble that could destroy everything your guardian has built for you. I'm proposing a solution that gives everyone what they actually need instead of what they think they want. Met her gaze steadily. Humanity needs a home and a future. The Council needs humanity's strength for what's coming. And the galaxy needs to learn that the species everyone thought was extinct has evolved into something stronger than before. And if I refuse, if I decide that revenge is worth more than redemption, then you'll get your war, said simply. And I'll stand beside Kay when the Council's fleets come for you, because he taught me that strength protects weakness and loyalty matters more than blood. The silence that followed was broken by Admiral's slow, thoughtful nod. You're not what I expected, she admitted. Neither are you, replied. But that might be exactly what the galaxy needs right now. 3 hours later, the foundation of a new agreement had been laid. Humanity would emerge from the shadows, not as conquered refugees, but as a species that had survived extinction and learned to thrive in the harshest possible conditions. The Council would get access to human innovation and adaptability, while humanity would get the chance to prove that their survival had transformed them into something greater than they had been before. But as and Kay prepared to leave Concordia 7, both knew that the real test would come in the years ahead. Words were one thing, actions were another, and somewhere in the unexplored darkness beyond the rim, ancient threats were stirring that would test every alliance and challenge every assumption about what it meant to be strong enough to survive. The human raised by a dragon had brought 2 civilizations back from the brink of war. Now he would have to help them prepare for the challenges that lay ahead, carrying the hopes of both his birth species and his chosen family into an uncertain future. The galaxy was about to discover that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from forgetting your origins, but from transforming them into something the universe has never seen before.